We
So
are under the
what I
new
plan
operation
on,
and model phases.
exactly. So what I'm planning on sharing in the 15 to 20 minutes is a bit in a 30 seconds, who we are, what we have experienced in the past 2 months. And then I'm going to share some insights from a virtual event that we decided to run ourselves called Almost in Person. And in particular, the insights from a survey we did to 400 of our prospects and customers in general, marketers and event leaders. So I'm going to share my screen. Just maybe one person can confirm that they can actually see my slides.
We can.
Okay, thank you. So in a nutshell, as Marav said, Bizzabo is an event success platform. Our vision is to unleash the power of professional events, whether they are in person or virtual, to create impactful and rewarding experiences. These are my two more handsome co-founders, Eran and Boaz. And my role, I'm the CMO and Chief Customer Officers. In essence, I'm in charge to create the demand and to make sure that the customers are not running through the back door. We are a B2B SaaS, have around 500 customers from around the world, 115 Bizzaboers from our New York, Tel Aviv, and Ukraine offices. And we're very proud to have an award-winning product and company culture that is being used by corporate, mid-market, and enterprise organizations. Now, when COVID hit, beginning of March, we are used to riding a roller coaster. Rafi can attest that it was never an easy ride for us, but we told ourselves, okay, that's going to be a new chapter in our book, because every day we heard about another customer that is canceling their event. And within 2 weeks, we almost did not have any customers with the planned events for the next 3 months. And just to give you a sense, we're supposed to have around 1,000 events being run on our platform from March to June. Within 3 weeks, we've launched a new virtual platform that is fully integrated into our event management software. And we decided to eat our own dog food in a way and run our own virtual event, mainly obviously to showcase our technology, but also to create demand. So we looked at it from a marketing perspective, not necessarily from a product demonstration perspective. It was clear to us that the market, and I'm sure all of your industries, has been shaking up big time. And there's nothing like a big virtual event to bring the industry and to bring the community together and to share some insights. The reason it was impactful, again, specifically in the event industry, is that, again, only 10 of the world's biggest tech conferences, from all of the names that you probably know, South by, CES, and so on, only the cancellation of those 10 has caused more than $1 billion in economic loss. And without talking about event sponsorships and registration sales and pipeline and many billions of dollars that got lost specifically in the event industry. We had a gut feeling, but we decided to bring data. So we surveyed 400 people in less than 2 weeks. 80% of them were manager, directors, and above. Half of the participants came from companies of more than 1,000 people. So this group represented people from serious organizations. 65% of them were from North America and around 20% were from Europe. It was clear, and I'm sure the group here can feel it very well, that they all tested that organizational resources have become more scarce, with 14.6% had to reassign team members, 22% had layoffs or furloughs, 8% complete layoffs or furloughs. I can tell you that we worked with teams that got evaporated in the past 2 months. And I think that we surveyed people at the end of April, and I believe the situation has become worse since then. Sorry, I did not plan to do that. We came up with a framework called Lead the Way. I'm not going to go through all of that now. We do not have a lot of time, but in general, we try to educate marketers to think very much long-term, and we shared some data related to it. it was very clear that the majority of event marketers have needed to cancel, postpone, or pivot their events to virtual. And to those who are not running events on a daily basis, and by the way, I will do a very, very quick survey just with hand raises. How many of you are running events? I'm talking about the days before COVID. How many of you are actually running in-person events as part of your marketing programs? Many of you are without video, but those who are with video, it looks like the majority. So same thing with those who have been completed this survey, and 64% of them have had to postpone their events, and 60% have pivoted to virtual, and many have canceled their events completely. Now, over 90% of event marketers plan to incorporate virtual events into their strategy. The reason is that when they realized that it's not possible to meet their prospects or their customers in person, everyone was looking for obviously other ways to engage their audiences, and engagement have also become a key word that I'll get to it. I'll get to it right now. Having said that people are going virtual, we've also asked the 400 people, when do they anticipate that their organizations will resume hosting in-person events? And we saw that the majority think that it's not going to happen in 2020. 44% even thought that somewhere in 2021. There is hope. Everyone thought that in-person events will be back and that virtual events cannot replace them. It was also clear that this is just a moment in time. This is a slide that we keep showing recently. When we look at things from the bird's eye view, we see that until March of 2020, that was the in-person era. Events have been there for thousands of years, and around 95% of events were in person until now, and now almost 100% of events are virtual. But that transition is a temporary one because in-person will be back. Now we can argue whether it's going to happen in January 21, in October, but in-person events will be back, and we believe, and for marketers, we believe that in order to stay relevant, you need to embrace the fact that we're getting into a hybrid era in which virtual is not going away. It was temporary, but is here to stay, and that the new opportunity will become a hybrid one in which there will be a mix between a virtual and a hybrid event to create even more value and to create more opportunity for engagement between an audience that cannot make it or prefers to just participate remotely to those who are actually meeting in person and getting that impactful experience. Talking about engagement being the name of the game. So I all used to, when we ask people if they had experience running events, we had around 20 something percent said that they've run virtual events. But when we asked them what type of events, it was clear that they all ran webinars and not an actual virtual event. And that was an interesting discussion to really understand what is a virtual event. And mainly it was around engagement. To make sure that attendees can actually meet one another, that attendees can meet, I think Marav, maybe you need to mute everyone. Thank you.
I did.
I think you're on mute as well now.
Okay, I think I'm back. I hope so. So the engagement was the main differentiator between webinars and other virtual events. And I'm sure that when we are gonna hear about the virtual event of Redis Labs, we're gonna see that I assume that engagement was the key there, in which people actually participate and are not just consuming content, because that you can just do in a recording. I'll move on. We already saw early adopters and scaling brands and enterprise brands and event brands being shifted to virtual. And we are already, and this is my optimistic side of things, we're already in talks with many of those enterprise organizations how to incorporate their hybrid event strategy once in-person is actually back. So you hear me talking about engagement, but then you're asking, okay, but how can I actually prove that? What KPIs you should use to measure a virtual event success? It's the form of survey. 80% of people thought that attendee engagement and satisfaction is the #1 KPI to measure. Then obviously the demand side of us, the number of qualified leads, the attendee retention, event over event, meaning engagement over time, and then sales pipeline, revenue from sponsorships, then revenue from ticket sales, which is still in its infancy in a way. I'm sure that many of you have not seen too many successful paid events on the virtual medium, although they are now coming. In the first 2 months of COVID, we saw very, very few paid events actually being successful. The problem is, and I assume that this is one of the reasons that you guys are here, is that most of us have not run a virtual event before. So this is new to all of us. It's a new category that is being developed, and that's why we are trying to constantly share a lot of information. A lot of it is on our blog at bizzabo.com. And many people are trying to adopt in-person elements through virtual elements. And you can see here that those elements are, again, engagement, networking, differentiation, impact, sponsors, which is something that not many companies are able to do effectively these days, but innovation is coming very, very fast in that area. And I mentioned that earlier, but at least based on that survey, we saw that people do not believe that the virtual event category will be able to replace the in-person one. 96% thought that. Event marketers are looking for technology that supports a hybrid event technology and aspects of event technology that will play a key role in 2020 and 2021 is a hybrid solution that can manage both of their events, mainly so that you have data that you can then prove the ROI on and connect to your marketing systems and sales systems, and to not need to manage 2 different platforms to make it difficult to actually measure that ROI. In terms of revamping event strategy to fit the virtual world, it's all about obviously being agile, and specifically, when event budgets are decreasing, you will not have venues, you will not have food to cater to people. We do see, by the way, that budgets on event software are being increased. Another element that people are underestimating is, by the way, AV, meaning audio visual. People think that a virtual event can be just hosted on Zoom. Having said that, a 3-day virtual conference with many sessions with people dialing in from around the world do require a professional help of an AV studio of some sort. I'll be able to elaborate on it maybe if we have time for questions. In terms of adjusting event-related goals, when we ask people what are their main goals to aim for when they're running virtual events, you can see the answers. The majority of people said customer relations, education and retention, then prospect engagement, lead generation, and sales acceleration. I do want in the time we have to share a little bit some practical tips from the event that we ran ourselves. We promoted it for a month. It's the first event that we ever ran. We're an event success platform, but people usually run events on top of our platform, so we have not run an event of our own. So the first time we ran an event, it was 6,000 people. 3,000 people actually showed up. That's a pretty high show rate from 70 countries. It was 4 hours of very inspiring discussion. And again, just to show you a little bit, and I'd be happy to follow up later, we had we used our own platform, obviously, for the event agenda, had a whole strategy for speaker prep that is, in my mind, at an even higher level, because you do not want someone joining and their kids to show up in the background. So we had a pretty strict preparation with speakers. We had a production schedule, which I can show with you, the template that I think was very, very helpful to know at every second what is shown up on the screen. And it actually looked like that. Some sessions were pre-recorded. Most of the event was actually being broadcasted with this gear over here. You can see in the background the TV that is showing the different, in a way, like a TV channel, that you see the preview and who's going on air, and there was someone who was preparing the speaker and telling them, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're alive, and so on. And again, that's not relevant for now, but we did create a lot of engagement with interactive happy hours, with an event app as a second screen, with a Slack community, with a whole strategy in regards to by topics, introduction channels, and so on. And we had there thousands of people were actually interacting on that Slack community, and it was very, very successful. And we did things like real-time polling and removing virtual backgrounds to actually make it more real. We recorded some questions from attendees in advance, like when you see on CNN that you have someone actually recording their questions. So we did all kinds of things to keep people glued to the screen so they don't just view a recording. And I think that is actually the name of the game. And we had then a lot of insights to show the impact. And I can tell you that event fed our sales team for a month and a half later at a very, very high capacity. So I think that we're all going to see that virtual events are here to stay, and they are becoming very, very impactful in terms of pipeline and retention and so on. Okay. Not a lot of preparation. I hope it was helpful to taste a little bit from our own virtual event and some of the market insights, at least that we're seeing. And I'm happy to answer any questions about our own struggle of pivoting from an almost dying industry to closing in the past 2 months were actually the most successful we've ever had as a company in terms of sales once we've entered the virtual category. And I can tell you that this is just booming now. And you're probably getting a lot of emails with invitations to virtual events, so I'm sure that you can actually feel it.
Thank you, Alan. It's really interesting. It's really interesting to see if there will be paid events, paid virtual events, right? Because we don't see them yet. Guys, if you have questions, and I think maybe we'll take all the questions at the end, so we have enough time to hear everybody. Okay, is it okay with you, Alan? Okay, so moving on to Howard from Redis, which is Howard, you're a returning customer. We also hosted you on our previous forum, but I thought that the conference that you held 10 days ago were like amazing. And I even, speaking about engagement, I even got to ping pong during the conference on your ping pong corner. So I suggest you take it from here and share how you planned it and how you managed it. Go ahead.
Good. Yeah, Marav, thanks for having me and my team. I'm joined by a couple people on my team. We're going to put up a few slides here. Mike is going to drive the slides. Mike, go ahead. Yeah, again, thanks for having me. I was thinking back the first time that I was able to address this group, we were just beginning the COVID crisis. And here, the second time I'm addressing this group, we're actually starting a new crisis here in the US in a big way and all throughout the world now. So I really hope, and very tragic stuff happening here in the US. I really hope that the next time I speak with you, something positive will be happening. Like maybe the presidents of our two countries are getting booted out of office. Maybe that'll be the happier moments. But on to the topic of the day. So we named our conference, our virtual conference, Takeaway. I think that's one of the first pieces of advice I would give is you need to rebrand your conference, because there's going to be some confusion between whatever the physical version of the event was and the virtual. And I've seen lots of different Companies take different approaches, but we decided to give it a different brand. So we call it RedisConf Takeaway. And the idea was, just as you would be able to take food from a restaurant and take it away or take it to go, as we say here in the US, we wanted you to feel like you could get most of the conference experience, but enjoy it in the comforts of your own home office. So joining me on the call today are a couple of the key people that made the event happen. Mike Kwan, who runs all demand gen for us, and then Bao Fan, who basically ran point on the conference. They're going to speak a little bit later. Just to give you a sense of the timeline that we went through when we transitioned the event. So we opened RedisConf as a physical event on February 7th, and we started opening the conference for registration. And this is just as the whole coronavirus situation was unfolding. And at that time, we obviously did not know what the world was going to look like. Fast forward 1 month to March 6th, and it became very clear to us at that point that it was impossible to have a physical conference. In fact, many jurisdictions, states, and local governments here were starting to ban physical gatherings of large numbers of people. And so at that point, we made a decision to go virtual with the conference. And I'll just quickly add, there were also considerations for just canceling the event altogether and maybe postponing it to later in the year. The reason we decided not to do that, to give you a little more color on the situation, is this was a very, very important event for us in the sense that the company is transforming from what the first act was of the company to the second act of the company. And the first act was really Redis as a caching tool. Redis is an open source database, NoSQL database. Historically, for the past 10 years that the technology has been around, most people have thought of us as a caching layer on top of an existing database. So it's an accelerant or an add-on to an existing database. And we really wanted to shift people's thinking. And so the theme of our conference was rediscover. And the great thing about that word is Redis is the first part of the word. And Bao came up with that theme, which was just amazing for us. And so we felt like we could not postpone this conversation. We really had to get this topic out there. We really had to start to shift the mindset of our developers to get them to use Redis for many more things that it's capable of. And so we decided we needed to push forward and we needed to do it as well as we could in a virtual format. So we launched it as a virtual event on the 12th, about a week after we made the decision. And then the event happened 2 months after that. So basically we had about 2 months to pivot everything from a physical conference to a virtual conference. Now, some of the key questions that we asked ourselves as we made this transition was, how long should it be? What are the keynotes going to look like? Are we going to have keynotes? Are the keynotes just going to be our execs? We had a bunch of different ideas about what the keynotes were going to be. If it was a physical event, we were going to have guest speakers, we were going to have celebrities involved. And so we had to really rethink, what should the content look like? What should the keynotes look like? We also had to rethink, what about sponsors? Historically, we've always had sponsors at our events. And we had to think about how could we create a good experience for our attendees and our sponsors. We have to think about whether we charge. Historically, we have charged for elements of our conference. And we have to consider, okay, how do we charge for this, if at all? And how do we justify that and make it worthwhile to our attendees? And then finally, there was some doubt about, okay, do we have enough time to pull it off? 8 weeks to basically source a platform, get it all ready, integrate it, produce all the content, get it all ready, orchestrate all the live elements. It was just a lot to take on. And obviously we made a decision to push forward, and it worked out very well for us. But it was 8 to 9 weeks of very, very hard days and nights. And I'll tell you one more thing that I think was really important, Mike, if you flip to the next slide. On our strategy, most times the conference is carried by two things, the experience of a conference. One is content. Content always comes first. But the second is the attendee experience. And when we saw a lot of virtual conferences or a lot of physical conferences being flipped to virtual around the same timeline, what we saw were a lot of things that were happening kind of like a supersized webinar. Essentially, there was a lot of content that was on demand, or it was a lot of kind of one way communication, one-way action, where they're presenting to you and the audience is sitting there and they're probably fatigued, you know, after maybe an hour or half an hour. And you saw some of the statistics and survey results from Bizzabo earlier. So we really wanted to focus on the attendee experience. We market and sell a lot to developers. Developers are a pretty fickle bunch, as you know. They're pretty, they can be a little thorny, a little bit nasty at times. And we had to keep them engaged, and we wanted to make sure that we provided the ultimate experience for developers. So we wanted to make it fun and engaging and really deliver a lot of value for them throughout the whole engagement, as opposed to just coming for one quick session and then leaving. And then finally, another thing very interestingly happened. Because a lot of physical events were being canceled and all going to virtual, it just so happened that a bunch of our key competitors had their events land right on top of ours after we scheduled it. And the #1 competitor was AWS. AWS canceled a bunch of their roadshow events, basically like the regional events that they hold. And they decided to do one big virtual event in the US on the same day as ours. And so immediately we were like, wow, okay, we're now going up against a gorilla on the very same day. We really have to differentiate. We had another company in our space, in the NoSQL space, also rescheduled their virtual event right on top of ours. And so it became like full on competitive at that point. We said, okay, we're gonna show all these other companies how it's done right. And so we really kind of took that challenge on. So those are some of the big elements that we had to work through as we defined our strategy. And then if we just now fast forward, and I think you heard a little bit of this from Alon as well, you know, just all the work streams. Now, there are a lot of these work streams that you would have anyway for a physical event, but there's some other ones, or there's some emphasis probably that shifts on some of these work streams when you go to a virtual. And, you know, for example, the whole registration and login process, we put a lot of effort into that because we wanted a very seamless experience. We didn't want people struggling with how to get into the platform. So we spent a lot of extra time on that. So we had to shift more emphasis there. We had to shift a lot of emphasis on the live production, because typically when you do a physical event, you know, you have an on-site production staff, and that's a pretty well-contained and well-understood thing. Trying to do a live production with people coming in from their homes with unpredictable internet bandwidth and backgrounds, like Alon mentioned, and, you know, distractions in their home. And we had, like, in our keynotes, about 20 participants all coming in live from different parts of the world, different hours of the day with different lighting. You know, we just had a lot of extra complication on the live production elements. So there was a lot there. And then also we focused a lot on like the day of support. How do we make ourselves available to help attendees with their experience if they're getting stuck, if they're frustrated, if they're having problems, you know, getting into the system, whatever. So we focused a lot on that. The content pieces, I think for the most part, remain the same. It was just more about we had to get that done earlier, because we did decide to do a mix of on-demand and live. And of course, all the on-demand stuff, we had to get in advance, and we had to do QA on that. Because you don't, you know, like with a live production, you know, there's only so much QA of the content you could do. But when you do it on demand, you actually have an opportunity to try and curate the content a little bit better. So that's how it all broke down. You can see here a lot of work, and I'm sure all of you that are planning virtual events, you're going to have to go through similar stuff. And then finally, just share with you a little bit of the numbers, goals. Mike, next. So, so this is finally, you know, kind of like what happened over, we decided to make a 2-day event. We originally had a 3-day event. We compressed it to 2 days. One day was focused on all of the keynotes and community sourced sessions. And then the second day was focused entirely on training, because training is always a big element of our conferences, getting developers educated on how to use our products and services. We decided to keep that and do it in a virtual format. So this is how we decided to break 2 days down. On day one, as you can see there, we did 2 live keynotes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And we did 43 breakout sessions, all on demand. Another of the key questions that we had was, when do we release the on-demand sessions? Because we had attendees from all over the world. We knew that once we shifted to virtual, the numbers were going to go up, because we were going to get accessibility to all our developers in India and Europe and places where they would have never traveled to our physical event in San Francisco. but we knew the engagement was going to be harder because time of day issues and things like that, the time zones. So we had to figure that out. But we coupled the on-demand sessions with a bunch of live stuff throughout the day. In addition to the keynotes, we had interviews with the speakers happening all throughout the day. So we had 13 of those. So presenters recorded their sessions. That was available on demand all at once, so people could watch it on their schedule. And then the speakers were available for live Q&A. We would have a host moderator ask them questions and then also take questions from the audience. And then we also did these Ask the Expert sessions where we would make experts available to do like office hours almost, like in a university setting. And so we had different subject matter experts available. We did 67 of those pre-scheduled and a bunch that were scheduled kind of ad hoc on the fly. And then on the second day, we did 15 on-demand training sessions. And then we did 13 live Q&A sessions. So the trainers were available throughout the day answering questions on various topics. So again, really like that kind of office hours type environment. And then we did a bunch of stuff to make it fun. We'll show you some of the stuff in a minute. Lots of ability to customize your avatar, like you wear a different Redis Labs shirt with different headgear and stuff like that. Really try to make it more engaging and fun and kind of geeky for our audience. And then lots of engagement activities like being able to network and chat with people. That's one of the key things that I think we miss or lose in the virtual format. We try to replicate that as best we could. The ability to kind of meet people at a conference, and we'll talk a little more about that. And then we had some games and prizes and stuff. So that's in a nutshell kind of what we did with the conference. Let me hand it over to Mike and Bao, who will go through a little bit more of the detail and kind of show you some more of the stuff that we did. Mike?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. Yeah, as Howard mentioned, this being sort of an important thing for us in terms of, our Act 2, if you will. We wanted our customers and prospects to rediscover Redis and be able to use it in ways that, maybe, 80% of the world isn't using them today, using us today. So that was a big part of how we did our content and an important theme for us in this conference. We shot a promo video, and it has like all the experiences. So I'm just going to go ahead and play that so y'all can see some of the things that Howard was speaking about. So we had a theater view where you can, watch various things. You saw the avatar build there. You could join sessions, and there was chat. And then, as Howard mentioned, you could actually play ping pong with other attendees. So that was sort of the experience in a nutshell. Let me kind of unpack this a little bit. So we had 3 areas. We had Watch, which is where all the content was hosted. And then we had Connect, which was sort of like where you did your networking and all that stuff. And then we had Community, which was, the leaderboards and where you edit your avatar and things of that nature. And we even did something cool. We, tried to play with the details, and when we had attendees joining from all over the world. And so when you joined the conference and in your time zone, it was nighttime, we tried to make the environment also look like it was nighttime for you, which was, just one of those little things that sort of delight attendees. As Howard mentioned, the results, so let's just start off with how many people registered. Close to 9,000 people registered for this conference. 4,000 actually attended. And a big thing for us internally is, we've got native and strategic account go-to-market motion. So from that perspective, we had 25% of the overall, people who registered come from our key accounts. And, they came from over 100 different countries. I was looking at the statistics, and we even had a person register from Uzbekistan, which was interesting. And we had a training day as well. So we had people 1,600 people basically attend our training, and closer to 3,500 people attend the conference.
Just for comparison, for our physical event, last year we got about 1,000 attendees, just shy of 1,000. So we basically 4x the attendance, and obviously the number of countries participating was dramatically smaller, probably like 5 or 6 countries. Most of the people come from the U.S. I don't know the number of strategic accounts that we were able to get at the conference last year, but I think it was low. We didn't do a good job of getting our strategic accounts to the conference. It had historically been more of a community event, more of like an open source event. And this year, because of the whole Rediscover thing, we also wanted to really get more of our target accounts, help sales more with this event. Historically, they had treated this as a kind of open source community event that they didn't really participate in or engage in. We also wanted to change that as we shifted this to virtual.
Yeah, and we did a quarter of a cost, so definitely good from a business perspective. Howard mentioned engagement. It was important for us to really try to replicate, the in-person sort of engagement. And so this is sort of some of the statistics around that. In terms of sessions, so we had over 50 on-demand sessions. We had close to 30 live sessions. And so there were 13,000, total sessions attended. A lot of time and engagement spent on the platform, 4,300 hours across all those attendees. We had 3,800 chat messages. So that was kind of our gauge to see whether, the chat thing was working. And, we had 10 different discussion groups. We had chat within each one of the sessions. And the thinking was that you would see the chat or see the emojis happen like on an on-demand session during the time of the session, like SoundCloud or something like this, where you can see the reaction. So it feels like, people are interacting in real time. We had emojis, so people could, react to sessions, could react to Keynote, could react to chat with emojis. And so we had 12,000 emojis that people sent, and we had 1,500 games of Redis Pong played. So we had people actually, interacting with the Redis Pong and taking some time off to check that out. So this was our way of kind of replicating some of those experiences you have at conferences. In terms of feedback, I'm going to hand this one off to Val. Val, go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm going to take you through how people reacted to the conference and then what our final takeaways were from the conference. On the first slide, I wanted to show that in case anyone is wondering whether or not people will come to a full 2-day event, the answer for us at least is yes. You saw that the majority of people did attend day 1 as opposed to day 2. The training workshops on day 2 were much longer, much more in-depth, much more technical. So that's a little bit to be expected, and that was how last year's in-person event turned out as well. But because we had the on-demand sessions available for both days, we did see engagement across both days from people. Going on to the next area, one of the things that we wanted to measure was something like an NPS score, which is a Net Promoter Score. For those of you not familiar with that, it just basically tells you whether people would recommend your product or your service to their peers. Our surveys showed a high majority of people would definitely recommend this event to a friend. So we're very encouraged by those results. Got a lot of great feedback. When we asked them what they valued the most out of the conference, we actually did 2 different versions of this survey, and the main difference was in the first, in one version of the survey, we asked about the virtual environment overall, and in the second version of the survey, we switched that out for the networking with peers question. In both of these surveys, you can see that the training workshops and the keynotes continue to be the most highly valued. So our content strategy of focusing on making sure we deliver quality content was spot on. This is absolutely what people wanted to see the most from us. And everything else was, of course, part of the experience that they enjoyed, but it was secondary. And then the important question to us in terms of the theme of Rediscovering Redis is, did this event help you change your opinion of Redis? We're very happy to see that 64% of the attendees are more likely to explore additional use cases beyond cache, and 57% are more likely to use Redis than before. These are the results we were hoping to get, and we're thrilled to see that people responded. So going through what our takeaways were from putting together this event, we broke it down into 3 different categories: content, platform, and overall. One of the big things we learned from a content perspective is that time zone clarity really is critical. We tried to make it as clear as possible that we're putting things in Pacific time zone just to keep it consistent and not try to publish, different time zones. But that information would get overlooked sometimes. And so I would say that you can't over communicate what the time zone is of something that's happening.
I think another thing to add there, Bao, is if folks are attending from India and Israel and the content's happening, it's important to think about when to actually release or do the keynotes, because you're going to get less engagement internationally if you do it in US time zones, and vice versa. So that was a interesting thing to think through.
Yep. But across the board, the live element was very much appreciated. People did tune in. We did our morning keynote at 9 a.m. Pacific, and we got a lot of attendees coming through at that time. And then what Mike was mentioning, the global friendly timing of the released content was appreciated. It was noted by attendees. They liked the fact that we released things at 6 a.m. for them to start watching on demand. In fact, for the second day, we released the training workshops on demand at 9 p.m. the night before and notified the community. So people started consuming those videos well before the live day on the second day. But one of the things that people suggested was, instead of dropping everything at once, maybe more staggered drops throughout the day so that they could come back and check out new things. Reaching a wider audience for us globally meant that we could have had a little bit more beginner-friendly content. There were a lot of people who are new to Redis, and they would have appreciated some deeper one-on-one stuff. In terms of the platform, the wow factor definitely helped us across social media. There were a lot of great comments, a lot of great tweets from people, and that helped spread the word to get even more people in throughout the conference. But one of the things we do want to consider the next time is having some lower technical requirements for people who might be faced with lower bandwidth, or they'll want to access from something different than their work laptop. And we also need to give equal priority to the mobile experience. Now, the mobile experience was something that we had on our radar, but given the time frame that we had in order to pivot to this virtual event and the kind of rich experience that we wanted to present for the virtual conference, we didn't have as much time and resources to dedicate to the mobile experience. But next time, we definitely will give that equal priority. Overall, I would say that definitely for me, one of the learnings was to take risks and be bold with what you want to go out with. It will pay off if you do it right, but you do have to take the time to identify the right partners in the space. Make sure that you have partners who are really able to deliver on what you're asking for in the time frame that you're asking for, and partners that you can trust when something does go wrong, that they'll be there to help you fix it. And then the last thing I think has been touched on throughout both of our presentations, Alon's and ours, that live production is really hard to do well at scale. Don't underestimate all of the pieces that need to go into it, from the equipment that needs to be procured from the agency to all of the rehearsals that are needed with all of the speakers in the different time zones and the different bandwidths and the different environments, to then actually getting everyone onto the final live stream on time and in and out of their time slots. That's really hard to do. That's it from us.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Marav, we're all done here, but we're happy to answer questions. Thanks for the, Alon, thanks for the emoji.
So guys, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, my camera's a little dark. How much, you said you had 2 months to prepare.
Maybe present yourself, just Michal.
Oh, hi, Michal from Personetics. Hi. You said you had 2 months to prepare for it, but was the content already, had you already had an agenda built out for, and speakers already lined up for the regular event? Or did that also include you know, getting all of the content put together?
It was already underway. It wasn't finalized yet. We were still sourcing speakers, and you know, once we flipped to virtual, actually, it made sourcing speakers easier, because getting people to fly to speak is one level of commitment. You know, it's like a 2-3 day commitment with T&E. Someone can now present from the comforts of their own home. It really allowed us to go shoot higher for speakers. And so, yeah, we had probably, like, I would say 40–50% of the content locked down, at least the speakers, but then we still had more work to do. And when we flipped to virtual, we started aiming for a much higher speaker profile.
Thanks. It's amazing what you guys did. It's really super impressive.
Thank you.
I have a question to Alon. Alon, what's the benchmark that you see for B2B companies for conversions from RSVPs to actual attendees?
What we see is between 20 to 35% on average. It's a pretty wide range, but we actually see, I think, what Howard and his team, and also in our own almost in-person event, was definitely higher than the benchmark.
Indeed, very impressive. Thank you.
I also have a question to Alon, or maybe to the entire forum even, but I think, you know, there's so many virtual events happening, and because it's easier to produce and it's cheaper, a lot more of them are happening. And I'm curious, how do you prevent the fatigue, or the, you know, how do you stand out? And Alon, you spoke about engagement, which I think is really important, because all of the events where you just kind of sit there and your video is off and you're just, you know, I think people will get tired of those very quickly. But I'm curious as to your thoughts on what will get people to continue to join these virtual events in the, you know, like in 3 months or 6 months.
I think that's a great question, and that is a question that will require us all as marketers to embrace the purple cow thinking and really think hard for your particular audience, what will actually cause them to not just view a recording. So I talked about engagement, but obviously it comes in many forms, from very unique networking opportunities to maybe time with speakers and sponsors that in an in-person event is harder to create. I do also think that there's an opportunity now to aim higher in terms of speakers and even celebrities, because people will join from their home. So I've seen many examples of corporates bringing in celebs that you would not imagine would actually show up at an in-person event. And to use talent to actually bring people to see them live is just one example that I saw working very well.
Interesting. Yeah, we actually also had, we've done virtual events, but we've also done virtual meetups where we divided people into breakout rooms and just kind of let them connect. And we saw that actually got really good feedback, even more than sometimes than the virtual event because people wanted to speak to each other. Yeah, so agree on that. Thank you.
I think something just to add quickly, you know, the fun element I think is really important. If you're going to try and keep people's attention for a whole day or half a day or multiple hours, you got to make it fun. And we had something almost like inadvertent happen with us because of the platform that we selected and the kind of things that you could do. There were like little like Easter eggs being found by people. Like some attendees started figuring out how they could make their avatar like jump during the conference, and then other people started like trying to figure out how to do that. And so like, you know, little like fun stuff like that could go a long way to keep people engaged.
Interesting. Thank you.
This is Johnny from Pioneer. We've done last week we did our first virtual conference. It was a smaller event in the US, and we're now aiming to do something more ambitious, global, for 24 hours. And we were originally thinking of trying to do it 24 hours every session to go live. And I saw that you took the approach of doing more of it pre-recorded on demand, which I guess probably lowers the stress level when everything is already in the bank beforehand and you have fewer live sessions. But did you feel that you paid a price for that, in that you weren't able to necessarily have live chat and have the presenters even respond to questions as they were coming in?
Yeah, that's Johnny. That was a key factor in our decision to say to do both. Actually, we did both. I don't know if you caught that, but we had all the content queued up and dropped like Netflix would, you know, just make it all available at once. But we married that with live stuff throughout the day. Like during every hour, there was something live happening, and a lot of those were like interviews with the speaker, so you could kind of get a little more color, a little bit more kind of off the cuff organic conversation with the speaker, as opposed to something that was totally canned and presented, which I think really fatigues people. You know, if you feel like you're just watching YouTube videos, they're going to just leave, you know. And so we had live stuff happening throughout. So we did, you know, altogether probably like, I don't know, 25 live sessions, about something like that, right, between all the interviews and whatever.
And
so,
not just interviews too. There were Q&As where the attendees could submit questions live, and we had a moderator who was sifting through those and reading them out loud to the speaker, who would then answer the actual attendees' questions.
One thing that I think is helpful is to imagine a live event. Think about the keynote. Usually a keynote is not very collaborative or conversational. And that is actually pretty similar in the virtual space. If you want your keynote to be very collaborative, probably if you have a couple of thousands of people listening, it's not a conversation. It's a person who's broadcasting to a large audience. And then at the end, you are willing to take questions. And this is something that you can actually do, a pre-recorded session, and then the speaker is actually coming live to take questions. Having said that, in the breakout rooms where the audience is smaller, this is more collaborative and engagement, so it's easier actually to do that live.
Hi, this is Rachel, also from Pioneer. I just wanted to ask, I guess for all of you, the best way to prevent your Wi-Fi or speaker's Wi-Fi from crashing, and also security, like video hacking that's been happening across many events. I know security is a big thing virtually, so what would you suggest is the best way to prepare for that?
Yeah, we used a custom platform. So we didn't use Zoom, even though Zoom was a feed and that our stream provider, live stream provider could have taken. We decided to use a more custom platform. And I think that helped mitigate the security risk, because every speaker had a custom link and we could control that a lot better than creating a Zoom meeting. So that's one thing that we did on the security side. I'm sure like we're all going to learn new stuff. I mean, frankly, maybe we just got lucky and we didn't have those issues because, you know, we're one of the first events. But as these events become more frequent, I'm sure the more prominent companies will get attacked in some way. But we didn't have any issues like that, and maybe just because, you know, we got out ahead of it. But next year we definitely will be considering more of those kinds of issues.
Yeah, just to add to that, we also asked all the speakers to, if they could, get wired in rather than being on their Wi-Fi network. Go ahead and connect directly to Ethernet. That's not going to protect you 100%, but you know, give you a better shot.
And did you provide them with that in advance? I know some companies do send out routers or Ethernet cords.
We didn't. Yeah.
We offer that
question.
to all speakers. Oh, sorry, Pete, go ahead. I was just about to say that we offered all speakers to actually send them a router, but they were all very confident that their internet works great. So we decided not to challenge them.
So Pete from Pyramid Analytics, one quick question for both of you. Did either of you use the virtual exhibition type model and live chat at booths and that kind of an engagement model?
For us at Redis Labs, we decided not to do the exhibition because of the time frame that we had, the 2 months. There was already so much to coordinate and make sure it was done in a quality way. We just decided to do away with it because we also had a question about, okay, how do we distribute leads? Because the platform then would have to be able to track which exhibits or vendors you engage with to control who got what leads. That was just a whole other set of issues that we just didn't want to deal with. So we decided just to not do sponsorships for this year, but next year we're going to reconsider.
Gotcha.
Actually, it's the same answer in our case. Having said that, we do get a lot of feedback from our customers that they do want such features and to be able to create such a forum for exhibitors and attendees to meet one-on-one and to engage. And it's something that we're going to release actually in the next few months. And I'll use the opportunity to say thank you, Marav and Viola, for inviting me and to be able to speak with all of you, but I have to jump to a customer call. So again, have a nice day, have a nice evening, wherever you are, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Alon.
Thank you.
Guys, any other questions?
Yeah, we could stay a few more minutes if anyone else has questions, or we're happy to follow up offline too. I know we've gotten a lot of questions about our platform vendor. It didn't look very impressive there in the video because the video quality over Zoom is pretty bad, but our platform is actually available now. So if any of you want to go check out what the platform looks like, just go to redisconf.com and you could go in there now and check it out. And you'll see it's a very, very slick experience.
I have a question. How do you envision the event working next year if you can also have a physical event? Are you going to try and incorporate the physical and digital, or of one or the other?
Yeah, I think, you heard it earlier from Alon that, a lot of folks are going to go with the combo or hybrid experience. I think we're still on the fence. It's definitely going to incorporate some of this virtual stuff, but we may just do it all virtual again, just given the results that we saw. If you could get those results and save, 75% of your budget, which we did, we spent, a quarter of what we would normally spend on physical. If we're going to get those results for a quarter of the budget, we just stick with that, free up budget to go do other things. So I think we're still on the fence about whether we're going to do virtual only or hybrid, but we're definitely not going to do physical only. I think, the world has definitely changed now.
I have another question, if that's okay. What would you say is the most, like the best thing that you did in terms of planning? Like if you had to highlight one thing that you think, we should all think of that maybe wasn't so intuitive, and also one thing you wish you would have really focused on more coming out of this.
What do you say, Pal? Mike?
Wow. I would say that having the right core team steering committee is so critical. People who are the actual right decision makers and people who are not afraid to make the hard decisions. That was really critical. And fortunately for us, we had an event agency also that was really on top of things. That was probably, those two things were linchpins to our success.
I think the one thing we underestimated was how hard it was to do live production. If you're going to do that event, you're going to do 24 hours, you're going to start hearing things like, that's crazy, and you know, you need 15-minute breaks to reset all the, you know, machinery. So, you know, definitely start looking for that partner ASAP, because, you know, that was very, very difficult to execute.
Yep.
I love the ambition though, 24 hours straight. It's kind of like a, you know, a DJ that starts New Year's Eve in Japan and just hops throughout the world. That would be pretty sweet if you pull that off.
We'll happily come back towards the end of the summer and let you know whether we managed to do it.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I like the metaphor though. Guys, thank you very much for your time. Thanks all the speakers. If you're willing to share the presentation so we can send it out to the group, that would be awesome. And you're welcome to you know, hook up one-on-one and discuss you know, in person the things that you want to elaborate more. So thank you, and see you on the next marketing forum. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, Mira.